On behalf of the Father John Murphy, Division 9, Plymouth, the Ancient Order of Hibernians, and the town of Scituate, we would like to welcome you to the annual Easter Rising commemoration. And before we get really started with the program, Maureen E. Haiti will be singing the Irish and the American national anthems. Suffice to say, an event like this would never take place without a lot of people making it happen. So before we get started, we'd like to say thank you to, first of all, to Father Matthew Connolly and Nancy DeCoste of St. Mary of the Nativity, who were kind enough to let us use the parish center. Also, I'd like to acknowledge State Rep. Joe Moschino, State Rep. Patrick Kearney, Plymouth County Commissioner Greg Hanley, Plymouth County Register of Deeds, John Buckley, and also the Scituate Select Board. We have with us today Karen Connolly, who's going to be doing a reading, and also I wanted to acknowledge both Karen Connolly and Karen Canfield, who's been supporters of this event ever since it got started, ever since they've been on the Scituate Select Board. We also have with us today Jamie Gilmore, who will be doing a presentation later. And also Michelle Segisi, who is the secretary for the Scituate Select Board, has been very helpful throughout organizing this event. I want to also acknowledge Seth, the videographer, who's videoed every single Easter Rising commemoration. Thank you, Seth. Also want to acknowledge the president of the Scituate West Cork Sister City Group, Jim Canavan, and the president of the South Shore Irish Heritage Trail, Brendan O'Connor, who are both here today, as well as members of both the Trail Group and the Scituate West Cork Sister City Group. We are fortunate to have with us today the Vice Consul of the Republic of Ireland, proud son of Galway, Paul Rooney, and a number of members of the Father John Murphy Division 9 Plymouth. who have co-sponsored this event ever since the centenary in 2016. Past President John Travers, who's going to be doing a reading, our President Mike Schilling, and other brother Hibernians who have made this happen. And we're fortunate to have with us today both Steve Lindsay and Maureen Haiti, both of whom are extraordinarily talented singers who are going to bring their gifts to share with us today. And one of the pivotal people to make this event happen and has been an extraordinary supporter is Professor Catherine Shannon, who's here today. She'll be talking later, but she's done a tremendous job putting together this program, giving input and insight. So Professor Catherine Shannon will be hearing from her. But I'd like President Mike Schilling, if you could.
Good afternoon. Thank you for everyone for being here today. As John said, this is a long-running standing tradition with regards to our division in the town of Scituate that we're very proud of, that we put on every year. It takes a lot of people. As they say, it takes a village. And with regards to the support we get from the town of Scituate, along with the support that we get from our own division members in the AOH, we also have special sponsors that with their generosity makes it able to put on events like this. We have our gold sponsor for the event this year is Cara Group Travel. Our silver sponsors are Walter A. McKinnon Associates and Brian Houlihan, who owns many establishments in the area, along with Galley here at Scituate. Bridget's Irish Tradition out of Norton, a longtime supporter of everything that our division does, along with the Galway Girl Shop that is in Duxbury, the South Shore Irish Heritage Trail, which has been a long supporter. That's a two-way street at this point. One doesn't go without the other. Along with Hadley Welding and the Shanahan family of Weymouth. I just want to thank, again, everyone for being here. This is very, it's an event we take very seriously in our division. It's something we put a lot of effort into, along with many of the other events that we have on throughout the year. One that I would make everyone aware of, and something that we really are putting a lot of push for, is next month several of our members, along with some of their respective wives, are going on a 100-mile walk in Ireland next month. We're walking the National Famine Trail, which goes from Roscommon to Dublin. We're going to do 100 miles over 6 days, and all of it to raise money for local food pantries and organizations that their main goal is to fight hunger in our area and in our time. And we find it really fitting that we're going to do that, and that's where the proceeds are going to go. If anyone would like more information on that and how to donate, because we're taking donations as like a per-mile sponsorship, we have information out back. As well as more information about our organization. If you're interested, how to contact us, how to get involved. And then after that, I would just like to really thank you, everyone who's going to be part of the program today, and the musicians we have on the stage today. Everybody is a great supporter of our events, and we couldn't do this without you guys. So thank you, Steve and Maureen, brother Steve. But yeah, I'll pass the mic back on to John, and he will start the program. Thank you.
One of the other aspects of this event, and I was remarking to Vice Consul Rooney, because he had walked Front Street, the main street in Scituate Harbor, before coming here today. And as I shared with him, I said, lots of cities and towns all over America will fly the Irish flag for St. Patrick's Day. I believe Scituate is the only, if not one of the only, cities or towns anywhere in America to fly the Irish flag for the Easter Rising commemoration. And we've done it every year through the support of the town of Scituate. So, Vice Consul Rooney.
Good afternoon, thank you, John. So good afternoon, everyone. Always very pleased to be in Scituate. Thank you to the Father John Murphy Division of the AOH and all the organisers for the invitation to join for this commemoration of the Easter 1916 Rising. These commemorations afford us the opportunity to remember the courage and sacrifice of those brave men and women who gave so much for Ireland's freedom. It's also a chance to mark the anniversary of those who lost their lives during those turbulent and consequential years in Irish history. As Ireland's President Michael D. Higgins noted in the recent 2025 commemorations in Dublin, the men and women who participated in 1916 were inspired by the Declaration of the Republic and the dream of a better, fairer future. The literature and culture for the period and the work produced in subsequent times reflecting on this chapter of Irish history offers us such a wonderful platform to think about this episode and also the lessons that can be learned today. So I'm delighted to partake in this afternoon's event. Hope everyone has an engaging and thought-provoking afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. The first poem is going to be Dark Rosaline, and Brother Greg Shanahan will read that.
Dark Rosaline by James Clarence Mangan. Oh, my dark Rosaline, do not sigh, do not weep. The priests are on the ocean green, they march along the deep. There's wine from the royal pope upon the ocean green, and Spanish ale shall give you hope, my dark Rosaline, my dark Rosaline. Shall glad your heart, shall give you hope, shall give you health and hope and hope, my dark Rosaline. Over hills and through dales have I roamed for your sake. All yesterday I sailed with sails on river and on lake. The Erne at its highest flood I dashed across unseen, for there was lightning in my blood, my dark Rosaline. My own Rosaline, for there was lightning in my blood, red lightning through my blood, my dark Rosaline. All day long, in unrest, to and fro do I move. The very soul within my breast is wasted for your love. The heart in my bosom faints to think of you, my queen, my life of life, my saint of saints, my dark Rosaline, my own Rosaline. To hear your sweet and sad complaints, my life, my love, my saint of saints, my dark Rosaline. Woe and pain, pain and woe, are my lot night and noon, to see your bright face clouded so, like to the mournful moon. But yet will I rear your throne, again in golden sheen. 'Tis you shall reign alone, my dark Rosaline, my dark Rosaline. 'Tis you shall have the golden throne, 'tis you shall reign and reign alone, my dark Rosaline. Over dews, over sands will I fly for your wail. Your holy delicate white hands shall girdle me with steel. At home in your emerald bowers, from morning's dawn till end, you'll pray for me, my flower of flowers, my dark Rosaline, my fond Rosaline. You'll think of me through daylight hours, my virgin flower, my flower of flowers, my dark Rosaline. I could scale the blue air, I could plow the high hills. Oh, I could kneel all night in prayer to heal your many ills. And one beaming smile from you would float like light between my toils and me, my own, my true, my dark Rosaline, my fond Rosaline, would give me life and soul anew, my dark Rosaline. Oh, the urn shall run red with redundance of blood, the earth shall rock beneath our own tread, and flames wrap hill and wood, and gun peal and slogan cry wake many a glen serene. Ere you shall fade, ere you shall die, my dark Rosaline, my own Rosaline. The judgment hour must first be nigh, ere you can fade, ere you can die, my dark Rosaline.
And now to sort of put into context some of the history and some of the background to not only Dark Rosaline, but also some of the songs and the other poems you're going to hear, Professor Catherine Shannon, who has an extraordinary knowledge of Irish history and any one of these poems, any one of these authors, any one of the writers, Catherine knows better than most. And so, Catherine, if you could come up and share some of the backgrounds, if you could, about the songs and the stories, please.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming. It was really great fun to work with Mike and John in putting this program together and giving us a unique way to mark the occasion of the commemoration of the Easter Rising. A very transformative event in Irish history, as you'll all appreciate. I'm going to talk a little bit in more detail halfway through the program about the kind of general forces that were at work from the mid-19th century down to 1916 to make that event happen. But I do have some brief comments to make about the authors of the songs and the poems. James Clarence Mangan was a member of the Young Ireland group, and he was inspired very much by the Irish folklore in a Gaelic language tradition that was arousing the interest of a group of more or less middle-class young people in Ireland who were getting impatient for the liberation of Ireland. Mangan, Dak Rosaleen reflected that kind of trope that was very much part of Irish folklore of Ireland being a woman who was captured and needed to be liberated. And the Dak Rosaleen poem was first published in 1844 in The Nation. Now, moving on to Thomas Davis, he was perhaps one of the most prolific of the writers who were associated with Young Ireland and served for a number of years as the editor of The Nation newspaper. He was initially a supporter of Daniel O'Connell, but he grew impatient with O'Connell's political caution and O'Connell's opposition to any physical force. Unfortunately, he died in 1845 as a very young man, so his influence and talent was lost to Ireland. So I hope that sets up the biographical notes on the poem that we heard read so well by Greg, and now the song by Thomas Davis.
With boyhood's fire was in my blood, I read of ancient freemen from Greece and Rome who bravely stood 300 men and women. And then I prayed I yet might see our letters went in twain. And Ireland long have promised me our nation.
In 1867 in Manchester, a number of Irishmen stopped a prison van. And in the prison van, there was a feeding that was being held. And in the course of trying to shoot the lock off of the door, one of the guards was killed. And 26 Irishmen were arrested and tried. 3 of them were convicted and sentenced to hang. Not one of those men pulled the trigger. And one of the last things one of them said as he went to the scaffold was, "God save Ireland." And that is the inspiration for this song.
High up on the gallows trees from the noble hearted tree, by the vengeful tyrant stricken in the blood. But they met them face to face with the courage of their race, and they went with swords and battled to their doom. God save Ireland, said the heroes. God save Ireland, said they all. Whether on the scaffold high or the battlefield we die, oh, no matter where for Ireland near we fall. Oh, God save Ireland, said the heroes. God save Ireland, said they all. Whether on the scaffold high or the battlefield we die, oh, no matter where for Ireland here we fall. Never shall we make a stage when we pass away. All the common life was given for our land. But because the scope, it's the joy and we don't want, till we make our island nation in time. God save Ireland, said the heroes. God save Ireland, said they all. Whether on the scaffold high or on the battlefield we die, on the matter where for Ireland near we fall. Oh, God save Ireland, said the heroes. God save Ireland, said they all. Whether on the scaffold high or the battlefield we die, on the matter where for Ireland near we fall.
One day all the rugged sand and his voices out we went, then England's famous fort around the night. Close beside the gallows tree, just like brothers loving me, true to all the brave and freedom to the heart.
God save Ireland, said the heroes. God save Ireland, said they all. Whether on the scaffold high or the battlefield we die, on the battlefield where we fall.
Next, we're honored to have with us the Scituate Select Board member, Karen Connolly, who'll be reading Fanny Poundell poem. This is also one of Karen's last public events in her role on the Scituate Select Board.
When I was asked to read this poem, I actually Googled Fanny Parnell. It was very useful, isn't it? And unfortunately, she died at the age of 33. So the poem is sort of prescient. And it was written in the mid-1800s to the late 1800s, so well preceded the Irish uprising. But the passions were great then, and I think they're still great now for the independence of Ireland. After Death by Fanny Parnell. Shall my eyes behold the glory, O my country? Shall my eyes behold thy glory? Or shall the darkness close around them ere the sun blaze break at last upon thy story? When the nations ope for thee their queenly circle, as sweet new sister hail thee. Shall these lips be sealed in callous death and silence, that have known but to bewail thee? Shall the ear be deaf, that the only love thy praises, when all men their tribute bring thee? Shall the mouth be clay that sang thee in thy squalor, when all the poets' mouths shall sing thee? Ah, the harpings and the salvos and the shoutings of thy exiled sons returning, I should hear, though dead and mouldered, and the grave damps should not chill my bosom's burning. Ah, the tramp of feet victorious, I should hear them knit the shamrocks and the mosses, and my heart should toss within the shroud and quiver as a captive dreamer tosses. I should turn and rend the cerecloths round me, giant sinews I should borrow, crying, O my brothers, I have also loved her in her loneliness and sorrow. Let me join you with the jubilant procession, let me chant with you her story. Then contented I shall go back to the shamrock. Now mine eyes have seen thy glory.
Thank you, Carol. Next, we have Brother Hibernian and former president of the division, Brother John Travers, who is going to be reading the oration over the grave of O'Donovan Rossa. And John's going to give you a little bit of background as far as who O'Donovan Rossa was. But as a preface to his being, Patrick Pierce being given the honor of doing this oration, he really wasn't as well known as some of the other leaders of the fight for Irish freedom. And when Tom Clark asked him to do this, Patrick Pierce said, well, you know, what do I do? How do I put this together? And Clark said, throw caution to the wind, make it hot as hell. So that's what Patrick Pierce did. John?
I want to know why I didn't get to do a short poem. No comment, okay. All right, thank you all for being here today. Jeremiah O'Donovan Rossa. What a great name, a very proud name, befitting of a very proud man. Jeremiah O'Donovan Rossa. Some of you may not be familiar with O'Donovan Rossa, but he was a rebel with a cause, freedom for all Ireland. O'Donovan Rossa was born in 1831 in County Cork, almost 200 years ago, and is still an icon in Ireland today. He lived through the Great Hunger and witnessed its horrors. Rossa was a member of the IRB, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, frowned upon by the English. O'Donovan Rossa was arrested, imprisoned, and sentenced to life in prison. He was eventually granted amnesty, sent into exile where he spent the majority of his adult life in the United States. O'Donovan Rossa died in June of 1915 in Staten Island, New York, at the ripe old age of 83 years. O'Donovan Rossa's remains were returned to Ireland to be buried in Glasnevin Cemetery in Dublin, where Patrick Pierce, on August 1st, 1915, gave his graveside oration in front of thousands of mourners. Words I will share in a moment. 8 months later, on April 24th, 1916, Pierce would speak again, reading the Irish Proclamation from the steps of the General Post Office in Dublin. 9 days later, just 9 days later, on May 3rd, 1916, Patrick Pierce was executed by firemen squad in Kilmainham Jail. It is said the words I'm about to share were a catalyst for Irish men and women across Ireland and abroad as well to rise up and fight for the freedom of Ireland. It has been thought right, before we turn away from this place in which we have laid the mortal remains of O'Donovan Rossa, that one among us should, in the name of all, speak the praise of that valiant man and endeavor to formulate the thought and the hope that are in us as we stand around his grave, And if there's anything that makes it fitting that I, rather than some other, rather than one of the gray-haired men who were young with him and shared in his labor and in his suffering, should speak here, it is perhaps that I may be taken as speaking on behalf of a new generation that has been rebaptized in the Fenian faith, that has accepted the responsibility of carrying out the Fenian program. I propose to you, then, that here, by the grave of this unrepentant Fenian, we renew our baptismal vows, that here, by the grave of this unconquered and unconquerable man, we ask of God, each one for himself, such unspeakable purchase, such high and gallant courage, such unbreakable soul, strength of soul, as belonged to O'Donovan Rossa. Deliberately here we avow ourselves, as he avowed himself in the dock, Irishmen of one allegiance only. We of the Irish Volunteers, and you of others who are associated with us in today's task and duty, are bound together, and we must stand together henceforth in brotherly union for the achievement of the freedom of Ireland. And we know only one definition of freedom. It is Tone's definition, Mitchell's definition, it is Ross's definition. Let no man blaspheme the cause of the dead generations of Ireland, served by giving it any other name and definition their name and their definition. We stand at Ross's grave not in sadness, but rather in exaltation of spirit that has been given to us to come thus into so close a communion, that with that brave and splendid gale, splendid and holy causes are served by men who are themselves splendid and holy. Donovan Rossa was a splendid and the proud in the manhood of him, splendid in the heroic grace of him, splendid in the Gaelic strength and clarity and truth of him. And all that splendor and pride and strength was compatible with the humility and simplicity of devotion to Ireland, to all that is old and beautiful in Gaelic and Ireland, the holiness and simplicity of patriotism of Michael O'Clery and Owen O'Brownie. The clear true eyes of this man, almost alone in his day, visioned Ireland as we of today would surely have here. Not free merely, but Gaelic as well. Not Gaelic merely, but free as well. In a closer communion with him now than ever before, or perhaps ever again, in spiritual communion with those of his day, living and dead, who suffered with him in English prisons, in communion spirit too, with our dear comrades who suffer in English prisons today. And speaking on their behalf as well as our own, we pledge to Ireland our love. We pledge to English rule in Ireland our hate. This is a place of peace, sacred to the dead, where men should speak with all charity, with all restraint, but I hold it a Christian thing, as O'Donovan Rossa held it, to hate evil, to hate untruth, to hate oppression, and hating them to strive to overthrow them. Our foes are strong and wise and wary, but strong and wise and wary as they are, they cannot undo the miracles of God, who ripens in the hearts of young men the seed sown by the young men of a former generation. And the seeds sown by the young men of 65 and 67 are coming to the miraculous ripening today. Rulers and defenders of the realms need to be wary if it would guard against such processes. Life springs from death, and from the graves of patriot men and women spring living nations. The defenders of this realm have worked well in secret and in open. They think that they have pacified Ireland. They think they have purchased half of us and intimidated the other half. They think that they have foreseen everything, think that they have provided against everything. But the fools, the fools, the fools. They have left us our Fenian dead, and while Ireland holds these graves unfree, Ireland unfree shall never be at peace. Thank you.
John, next time you do a short poem. Thank you, John. The next song is by Peter Carney, who, as you may know, was also the author of the Irish National Anthem. and was also happened to be the brother of Brendan Meehan's mom. So if we could, Steve Marie.
What song are we doing, Joe? Before you do this one. It was down by the cliffside I met an old woman, a plucking young necklace. Just saw I was coming, I listened a while to the song she was humming. Glory-o, glory-o, to the Wolf-Indian man.
Since I saw the moonbeaming on strong manly forms, on eyes with hope gleaming, I see them again, during all my sad dreaming. Glory-o, glory-o, to the Wolf-Indian man.
'Tis 20 long years since I saw the moon beaming on fine manly forms, and on eyes with hope gleaming. I see them again, true to all my daydreaming. Glory-o, glory-o, to the Wolf-Indian man.
When I was a young girl, they're marching and drilling. I walk in the glenside, sounds awesome and thrilling. They love poor Ireland, to die they were willing. Glory-o, glory-o, to the Wolf-Indian man.
Some died by the glenside, some died mid the stranger, and wise men have told us that their cause was a failure, but they look all of Ireland, and they never feared danger. Glory-o, glory-o, to the Wolf-Indian man.
I passed on my way, God be praised that I met her, be lifelong or short, sure I'll never forget her. We may
have great men,
but we'll never have better. Glory-o,
glory-o,
to the Wolf-Indian
Thank you, Maureen and Steve. We're going to hear next from Professor Catherine Shannon. But before she speaks, as some of you may know, Ken Burns is going to be doing a whole series on the American Revolution pretty soon. And there was an excerpt, an interview he was given recently, and he was asked, what were the chances of the American Revolution succeeding at the outset? He said none. None. England was incredibly strong and powerful. So one cannot help but think of what it was like for these rebels in 1916, when England had the armament, the soldiers, the cannon, the machine guns. Yet, a number of brave men and women decided to risk it all in the fight for Irish freedom. So really incredible that they persevered, and after 700 years of occupation, they were successful in making Ireland a nation once again. Catherine.
Thank you very much, John. The teacher and me came out this afternoon, and I just handed out some little sheets to let you know who the principal groups were that were involved in the Easter Rising, and a brief note on the traditions that inspired them and their leaders.
We call them concrete visuals.
Yeah, so anyway, that's just a little more information as I go through the rest of my comments. And thank you, this talented group of musicians, for your performance today. It's very, very moving. As has been reflected in the songs and poems that we've heard thus far, Irish nationalist feelings grew stronger in the aftermath of the Anglo-American War, when the romantic nationalism preached by the young islanders of the 1840s, like Davis, like Mangan, and T.D. Sullivan, grew in popularity. The young islanders followed the lead of the German philosopher Herder and the French political romantics, who believed in promoting not just constitutional nationalism, but the importance of ethnic, cultural heritage and cohesion based upon their respective language, folklore, and music tradition. This was a different approach from what Daniel O'Connell, known as a liberator, employed. O'Connell was more pragmatic, and he believed that Ireland's quest for freedom would best be served by gradual political reform achieved through constitutional measures. Having witnessed the excesses of the French Revolution, O'Connell totally opposed using violence for political ends. Yet he showed that mass popular moral pressure and agitation could be effective, as was illustrated in his successful Catholic emancipation campaign of the 1820s. For him, however, it must never spill over into violence. It's interesting that Frederick Douglass was a huge admirer of O'Connell and used the same kind of principles in his attempts to bring about the abolition of slavery. And this is a tradition that also inspired Martin Luther King. And today, I think, is the anniversary of King's famous Boston walk from Roxbury to the Boston Common. So it was an important relevance to O'Connell even today in our own region. Now, from the 1840s right through to 1914, there was a kind of tug of war between these two approaches to securing Ireland's national independence. Violence, however, failed in the Young Ireland Rebellion of 1848, and again in the Fenian Rising of 1867. And this opened the door to a return to O'Connellite constitutional and moral force methods, as happened during the Irish Land War from 1879 to 1882, and the rise of the Home Rule movement under the leadership of Charles Stewart Parnell in the 1880s, the older brother of Fanny Parnell, whose wonderful poem we just heard. And by the way, Fanny Parnell was an extremely important woman in pushing support for the Land League in the United States. She wrote a lot of her brother's speeches when he came here in the 1880s. She even wrote the article in the North Atlantic Review that he published under his name on the land movement. buried over in Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge. And in 2001, the Irish ambassador Sean O'Hagan dedicated a memorial gravestone for Fanny Parnell, carved out of County Wicklow granite. And it is similar to that stone that is in at Parnell's grave in Glasnevin Cemetery. However, the failure of the Home Rule Bills of 1886 and 1893, along with a split in the constitutional Irish Parliamentary Party over the Parnell-O'Shea marital scandal, allowed the forces of Irish cultural nationalism through organizations like the Gaelic Athletic Association, the Gaelic League, the Irish Literary Society, and the Abbey Theatre to gain support from a growing population of young bourgeoisie men and women who sought to overthrow English cultural dominance in their native land. Parra Pierce, Thomas MacDonagh, Owen O'Neill were among this group, and they drew inspiration from the heroic tales of early Celtic civilization, as well as from the achievements of medieval Irish scholars and missionaries who spread Christianity across the continent in the early Middle Ages. Unlike the small Fenian IRB and Clan na Gael in America, none of these groups that I just mentioned advocated the necessity of rebellion to achieve Irish freedom until the crucial years of 1913-14, when the implementation of the 1912 Home Rule Act was postponed owing to militant Ulster resistance to that measure and the outbreak of the First World War. The failure of the British government to challenge the formation of the paramilitary Ulster Volunteer Force led to the formation of the Irish Volunteers to counter Ulster's threats to stop home rule by force if necessary. By August 1914, the Irish Volunteers had enlisted over 120,000 in its ranks. Just after the outbreak of the First World War, the Home Rule leader, John Redmond, who was the president of the Volunteers, called upon them to join the British war effort. And this was an appeal that was not without success, but it came at a great cost. It split the volunteers and led to a quarter of the rank and file to leave and to organize under the leadership of Owen McNeill. McNeill retained the name of the Irish Volunteers, while the Redmond-led group was known as the Irish National Volunteers. Now, McNeill and his followers henceforth were unwilling to trust the British promises of eventual self-government any longer. Meanwhile, within months of the opening of the war, IRB leaders in Ireland began to infiltrate the Irish Volunteers and drew in young cultural leaders like Pierce and MacDonagh and O'Neill to help them put into practice the old dictum, England's difficulty will be Ireland's opportunity. And then comes in, of course, the IRB agents in the United States, chiefly led by the old Fenian leader, John Lavoy. He began to raise money and plan for the purchase of guns and ammunition from Germany to be sent to Ireland to assist the IRB and the other people that they brought into their plans to stage a rebellion during the war. It was Du Bois who organized Roger Casement's journey to Germany to secure additional arms beyond what had come ashore at Howth, just north of Dublin, in the spring of 1914. Now, another important event in the lead up to the Easter Rising was the consequences of the Dublin General Strike in 1913, when Labour leader James Larkin and his Irish Transport and General Workers Union brought Dublin to a standstill and infuriated the major business owners and the government. The business owners and the government decided to counter this by imposing a lockout, leaving thousands of Dublin unskilled workers without any financial resources for months. Then, when one group of protesters was shot and killed by British troops, it convinced Larkin's colleague, James Connolly, who was a convinced socialist, that Dublin's unskilled working class needed their own army to protect them from the brutality of the Dublin Metropolitan Police and the British troops in the city. Thus was born a citizens' army. Connolly's prime concern was the liberation of the working class from the evils of unbridled capitalism. But by late 1915, he became convinced that the workers' liberation could not happen until England's rule of Ireland had ended. Hence, he accepted the invitation of Owen O'Neill and also Pierce to collaborate with the IRB and the volunteers in an armed rebellion already being planned. On Easter weekend, only about 1,200 volunteers and 200 citizen army members and 70 women participated in the six-day rising. The capture of Casement and the loss of the German guns intended for the rebels led Owen McNeill to cancel the plans as foolhardy. But Pierce, McDonough, Connolly, Clark, and the other idealist leaders decided to follow through on Easter Monday. Despite the military failure, the proclamation read out by Pierce on Easter Monday, which we will hear a bit later over at the monument, remains an inspiring document whose lofty aspiration for equality and inclusion of all Irish people continues to have great relevance in contemporary Ireland and beyond. It's not just a historic document, it's a document that can set out for us important goals and aspirations even in 2025. While the goals and willingness of the leaders to sacrifice their lives was admirable and reflected their notions of Gaelic heroism and Christian ideas of blood sacrifice, it's important to note that these feelings did not reflect the majority view in Ireland of that time. Dubliners blamed the rebels for the destruction of their city centre and jeered and even spat on some of them as they were marched off to Killeen jail. Many of the inhabitants of Dublin's squalid tenements, whose male relatives were fighting on the Western Front, were vocally critical. John Redmond and John Dillon in Parliament, the principal leaders of the Irish Parliamentary Party, proclaimed that the rebellion undermined the constitutional tradition and made it more likely that Ireland would be partitioned into two jurisdictions after the war. Sean O'Casey, born and raised in the Dublin slums, had joined the Citizens' Army, but soon left when he became convinced that Connolly had betrayed the interests of the oppressed working classes for a nationalism that wouldn't bring them much improvement. O'Casey's brilliant play, The Plough and the Stars, staged first in 1923, reflected his views and was one of the earliest critiques of the wisdom of the Rising. O'Casey offers a similar critical perspective in his plays on the War of Independence and the Irish Civil War, Shadow of the Gunman and Juno and the Paycock. What turned the Easter leaders and their followers into martyrs and national heroes was the stupidity of the British military commander, Sir John Maxwell, who held closed summary court-martials in which the leaders were sentenced to death. And they did not have the benefit of any representation legally. Even the British cabinet was a bit upset at the procedure that Maxwell used. And he had actually only taken over command in Dublin about 2 days before the end of the Rising. The executions of the leaders were drawn out over a week and a half, May 3rd to May 11th, I think. And what this did was to turn public opinion quickly, and it eventually caused the Asquith government to cancel additional executions and instead imprison the rebels in English prisons, which over the next 9 months became kind of universities to train people to become rebels. Some months later, when the British government announced its intentions to introduce conscription to Ireland to fill their depleted military ranks, this outraged the entire population and added more legitimacy and admiration for the Easter Rising leaders and the tactics that they took. This was evident in the 1918 general election, when 75% of Irish voters supported Sinn Féin's independence platform. From these emerged a population determined to support the military campaign of the IRA from 1919 to 1921. This evolution of the reputations of Pearce, McDonough, Clark, and Plunkett and the others, from being considered a rather marginalized group of idealistic nationalists into admirable and courageous heroes will be reflected in the songs and the poetry that we will hear in the next part of today's program. Thank you.
of the foggy dew. The bravest battle of the Soviet fell, lying more fully and clear. For those who died on Easter tide in the springing of the year, and the world did gaze with deep amaze at those fearless men of you, who bore the fight so that freedom's light might shine through the foggy dew.
And but through the glen I rode again. All my heart with grief was sore, for I parted with all valiant men, whom I never shall see no more. But to and fro in my dreams I go, and I kneel and I pray for you. For slavery fell, oh glorious dead, when you fell in the foggy dew. For our slavery fled, oh our glorious dead, when you fell in the foggy dew.
Now we'll have a reading by W.B. Yeats by our brother Steve Kerr. W.B. Yeats, as many of you may know, actually knew quite a number of the leaders of the Easter Rising.
Easter 1916 by William Butler Yeats. I have met them at the close of day, coming with vivid faces from counter or desk among gray 18th century houses. I have passed with a nod of the head, or polite meaningless words, or have lingered a while and said polite meaningless words, and thought before I had done a walking tale or jibe to please a companion around a fire at the club, being certain that they and I but lived where Watley is worn. All changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. That women's days were spent in ignorant goodwill, her nights in argument until her voice grew shrill. What voice more sweet than hers when young and beautiful? She rode to harriers. This man had kept a school and rode our winged horse with this other, his helper and friend, was coming into his force. He might have worn fame in the end, so sensitive his nature seemed, so daring and sweet his thought. This other man I had dreamed, a drunken, vainglorious love. He had done most bitter wrong to some who are near my heart, yet I number him in song. He too has resigned his part in the casual comedy. He too has been changed in his turn, transformed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. Hearts with one purpose alone, through summer and winter, seem enchanted to a stone to trouble the living stream. The horse has come from the road, the rider, the birds that range from cloud to tumbling cloud. Minute by minute they change.
A shadow of cloud on the stream changes minute by minute. A horse hoof slides on the brim, and a horse plashes within it. The long-legged moor's hen dive, and the hens to moorcock's call. Minute by minute they live, the stone in the midst of all. Too long a sacrifice can make a stone of the heart. When may it suffice? That is heaven's part. Our part is to murmur name upon name as a mother names a child, till sleep at last has come on limbs that had run wild. What is it but nightfall? No, no, not night, but death. Was it needless death after all? For England may keep faith in all that is done and said. We know they dreamed enough to know their dream and are dead. And what if excess of love bewildered them till they died? I write it in a verse. MacDonough and McBride, Connolly and Pierce, MacDonough and McBride, Connolly and Pierce, now and in time to be, wherever green is worn, are changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born.
Thank you, Steve. Now we're going to ask Vice Consul Rooney to read the Evan Baldwin poem.
Statue 1916 by Evan Boland. Stephen's Green, a half torso, her head and shoulders framed by the coarse flowers in the boxwood shrub. I was young here. In those years, night came down quickly on my neighbourhood. My children slept, worn out by play. When I lit the lamp in the corner, my hands made of light. That reason and faith are at odds, and will always be, I accept. Also that the season cannot matter now to the woman raised above me on a plinth. A scalding alloy of tin and copper once rinsed everything out of her head. Molten bronze poured away her name. Whatever else of memory might have been there, even the apple blossoms of her native Mara flow, all of it flensed off to make this fixed look, to make it seem sad, to make it look necessary. I will never be convinced.
we're going to have a presentation of a commemoration reading proclamation by the Scituate Select Board, James Gilman.
Thank you all for being here today. It's been very moving, to say the least. Town of Scituate Select Board, Irish Easter Rising Proclamation. Whereas the Irish Republican Brotherhood, led by Professor McNeill, had arranged for a parade to be held on Easter Sunday to organize a rebellion, but when the parade was officially canceled, a few Irish decided to go ahead with the rising, and whereas in 1916, on the morning of Monday, April 24th, about 1,200 members of the Irish Volunteers and Irish Citizen Army mustered at several locations in central Dublin to occupy a number of buildings selected because of their positions near barracks and major routes in the city, and whereas, despite great odds against them, these Irish patriots held out for about a week against the British. And whereas, after reinforcements arrived during the week, about 1,600 rebels were facing almost 20,000 British soldiers. And whereas, the 1916 Rising represented the first major demonstration of force since the United Irish Rising of 1798, and whereas the Rising led to an increased popular support for Irish independence, now therefore, the town of Scituate recognizes the 109th anniversary of the Easter Rising, signed this 8th day of April 2025, attested by Kathleen Gardner, town clerk, signed by the entire Scituate Select Board.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Before we adjourn, we're going to be going from here to the monument, which is by the bandstand in Scituate Harbor, and there's going to be the reading of the proclamation. And you're all welcome to that, and then we're going to be going across the street to the Hibernian Tavern afterwards. You're welcome to come to that as well. I wanted to especially thank Maureen and Steve Lindsay and Steve. And then Mike Schilling and Catherine Shannon, and for all the people who have prepared for So, thank you all for coming out again. We're going to bid you adieu now. Oh, Steve, you want one more song? Oh, you? Okay. This was a song, I believe was written by Howard Pierce, or did he adopt it?
Yeah.
He wrote it?
He wrote it.
All right. And I'll let Maureen talk about the background and the history of the song, but it's in Irish. Maureen's first language was Irish. So we'll see you at the monument after the song.
Oro Shidawahawala, I really talked about Grania Whale as well, with Grace O'Malley. And she was the first feminist of this great global movement in the 16th century. So there we are. Irish women have always walked a path that fearlessly. And he talked about who was helping them. So it's Oro Shidawahawala, and what it means, come on home, hale and hearty. And that's what she used to do, come over the tides and she plundered all the British ships of silks and satins and gold and silver and drink. All right. Oh,